What came about was the realization about the abundant wealth on the ocean floor. You may remember the manganese nodules, and very many other things. A huge deposit of rare minerals and metals. These have not yet been explored. But soon after that, probably encouraged by this finding of 1980, the law of the sea was adopted. And that was the time I was in the UN, and we went through this whole negotiation on the law of the sea, which was adopted in 1994. And this was a very beginning of international exploitation of the resources of the sea. Many things have changed then. Today, as we all know, is the International Maritime Day, which was proposed by the United Nations itself. This morning, I got up to read a message from the UN Secretary General, in which he said that the theme of this year is sustainable shipping for a sustainable planet. And he linked it to the famous Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Then he went on to say that in this particular year, we have to think more about the seafarers, the people who work in the sea, about 2 million of them, because they have been challenged in an extreme manner because of COVID-19. He said that their professionalism and sacrifice must be remembered. But this is not an exception. This is not a special thing for seafarers. Every profession is being challenged. Look at this meeting that we have to have like this, not personally. That is a sign of the times. So the challenge to us today is survival. Success can be defined as survival today. Because whatever we may do, unless you survive this crisis, there is no point in anything that we do. So that is uppermost in the minds of the people. At the same time, we have to be prepared for a post-COVID world. In the post-COVID world, what we should have is greater international cooperation. But unfortunately, at the time of the outbreak of the COVID-19, international cooperation actually failed us. Actually, the United Nations failed us. Because even during the earlier health crises like Ebola and SARS, etc., the United Nations Security Council took charge of it, not gave it away to WHO. Because WHO is a public health organization. But this is not just a public health issue. This is a threat to peace and international security, which is part of the responsibility of the UN Security Council. So it was a shame that the United Nations did not rise to that occasion and multilateralism failed. That is another story. I will not go into that. But the other thing I'd like to remember is, in this context, is the problem that we are having on our northern borders. We have not figured out as to why China at this particular time of a grave crisis decided to launch this attack on India. In fact, this is the time Chinese should have been in the dock, because they have been responsible. If they did not create the virus, they at least kept it as a secret and therefore did a major harm to humanity. But instead of feeling bad about it, they have become very aggressive and they are flexing their muscles all over the place. And if you notice it carefully, the bigger adventure they have taken up is in the ocean, not in the mountains. The mountains, what they are doing is basically something that they have done in the past to highlight the fact that the border has not been defined and making use of that opportunity, slowly grab our land to make their position stronger at the time of the negotiations. This is familiar. But this time, our response to that was much stronger, and therefore a greater possibility of a give and take. But why I'm saying this now, because we have to remember that perhaps what they are doing in the Himalayas is aimed at the resources of the ocean in the southern part of the South Asian subcontinent. Because not only in the South China Sea, but also in Southeast Asia, Indian Ocean as a whole, in Asia Pacific, China has a major thrust they are making in the hope that after COVID, if the United States fails to, in the leadership of the US, of the world, they will be able to step in. This is a false expectation. The United States is not going to disappear like that. But this reminds me of the fact that the only country or only party which once bid for the Vizhinjam port was a Chinese company. And we were on the point of assigning this task to the Chinese. And our intelligence agencies and the government of India put their foot down and said, this we are not allowing China to take. Now we realize how important that decision was. Now we are trying to break away from the embrace of China in our economic activities. It's not easy. But imagine the Vizhinjam port was also being built by the Chinese at this time. Imagine the kind of difficulties and problems we would have faced. So we must compliment whoever in the government of India we stop the Chinese from taking over the Vizhinjam port. I do not have to speak to you about the Vizhinjam port. It is going to be a very crucial establishment. In spite of all the complaints about environmental damage or problems that may create for the people of the area, it is now established beyond doubt that the Vizhinjam port is going to be the heart of India's development and Kerala's development. It has been delayed a lot, but we have some hope that this will come sooner or later. So in that context, we have to think in terms of the protection of the Indian Ocean and the Asia Pacific. And I remember in the 1980s, our focus was mostly not on resources of the Indian Ocean, but on the security of the Indian Ocean. The whole concept of the Indian Ocean as a zone of peace was developed by us, basically to keep the foreign forces out of the Indian Ocean. Of course, it was not possible, they're always there. But the principle that foreign forces must keep out of the Indian Ocean was our main mission at the United Nations at that time, at the Ad Hoc Committee on the Indian Ocean. And of course, it was just talk because they continued to operate there. But now it has been completely reversed. By the time I went second time to United Nations in 1992, after the Cold War, our own approach to the Indian Ocean had changed. That we had wanted to cooperate with other countries, not only the littoral and hinterland states, but also other powers. Of course, not with any ulterior motives, but with the motive of developing the resources of the Asia Pacific. I must also mention that as a result of the recent activity of the Chinese on our border, we have also revived what is called the quadrilateral, that is the United States, Australia, Japan, and India. We are very hesitatingly started this group, but for fear of provoking the Chinese, we were not very active. But we have now reason now not to activate it, and therefore this has also become a good opportunity for us. So I mentioned these political security angles because that is not something that may be covered in the discussion today. Because Nano is focusing on the economic aspects.